Hello!
Natalie and Henry here.
So normally, the Vandal Factory podcast features interviews and music and poems, and we have to do a little bit of editing to make sure everything fits into an episode.
But this is a special episode called The Factory Floor Cuts, and this is where we show you the full, unedited interview for all of your listening pleasure.
You're going to hear our chat with Emilia from the Menstrual Cramps, a mighty queer punk band from Bristol.
Oh, I love this conversation so much. This interview was taken out of episode 28, so you can go back to that episode if you want to and hear the song that Emilia chose, which I highly recommend, plus more discussions about art, music, activism, changing the world, one scrappy song at a time.
I'd also like to plug episode number 7, where we interviewed feminist hardcore yelpers Petrol Girls, and episode 24, which was recorded live at Manchester Punk Festival.
Lads, ladies, and everyone in between, it really means the world if you could subscribe, give us a 5-star review, leave us a comment, let us know that you're listening and what you're enjoying, what you're not. It really, really helps us as an independent DIY little podcast that we love doing so much.
Bring the noise!
I resent you working from home with a garden log on just to moan. I know it's wrong, we've all got our struggles. My work is stress with no support.
And I feel like I have to say, I'm suffering menstrual cramps for the last 2 days. Do you get like
Me
a
too.
lot of people just tell you that? Like,
yeah, and I love it.
The band.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm also suffering menstrual cramps.
Great.
Oh, my mate at work also had menstrual cramps.
There we go.
There we go.
We're taking over.
Yeah. Well, go on, let's use that as a starting point then. So for anyone who doesn't know, how did Menstrual Cramps come about as a name, but as a band in general?
I think we started in like 2017, and we're just an accidental band, basically. Like I was living, yeah, I was living with some friends at the time, and I was like, we were all getting kicked out of our like shared house, and like I was unemployed, just lost my job, and I was like writing angsty poetry at the time, and then my housemate at the time was like, oh, let's just record it into a song on this acoustic guitar and we'll just distort it on Logic Pro. And I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. And then we just made some songs and like just kept uploading them to SoundCloud just for like our friends and our housemates who like were actually at university or actually working. And we were like, haha, look what we did today. Isn't this so funny? That's how it started. And then we accidentally got booked for a gig, and then we had to find a drummer and a bassist and pretend we were a professional band.
Wow. That is amazing. And then we saw you, we were both at Manchester Punk Festival, and you were incredible. It was such a good gig. Was it for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. No, I loved it. We played a couple of years ago, we played at Breadshed at Manchester Punk Festival, which was also amazing. And then me and AJ, our drummer, went last year just as punters, just to see everyone, because we were like, oh my God, it was the best festival ever. And then, yeah, obviously we played this year. And I jokingly said, like, last year when I was there in 2023, I jokingly said to the MPF organisers, like, oh, we need to be here next year and we need to play main stage. And then I basically like demanded to be back there and demanded to play main stage, and they actually let us. And it was incredible.
You look completely at home up there. I mean, you owned it. It was amazing. I mean, go on, you were talking about the atmosphere earlier.
Did you like think, right, okay, there's a different technique in how you perform or respond to the audience, or was it just a case of, you know what, we're just going to do what we always do and just do it times 100?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I just thought, oh, we're going to do what we always do. I think in some ways it was like slightly more difficult with like connecting to the audience because of there was like a big gap between the main stage and where the crowd starts, and like there's obviously like loads of photographers and videographers. So at some festivals where we play bigger stages, you still have that, but it's still quite close together, and I can always like climb into the crowd and stuff. But at MPF, that main stage is like quite a big gap, and there's like quite a lot of photographers there, so I felt like I couldn't like climb over into the crowd, and that was sort of the only thing that I felt like was on my mind that I felt was like a bit lacking.
You want to get in there, you want to be in it.
Yeah, and I love like, you know, like standing on the speakers at the front of a festival and like, you know, like climbing on the stacks and stuff. But I couldn't do that at MPF, but it was absolutely fine. But
I think that like if anyone hasn't seen you live, they're starting to get a sense of what they can expect. It's like the energy that was coming off all of you was like it. Well, we were right at the back and we did not feel disconnected at all. Like it did feel like you were right in the crowd, like living, breathing, sweating, spitting in all of us. It was brilliant.
That's good.
What makes you walk away from a gig and go, we absolutely smashed that? Is it that you found the freedom to do your clambering? Is it the audience, or is it like the stuff around the gig, chatting to people? Like what's the best punk experience for you?
I think, to be honest, it's all of it put together. Like I think, yeah, like the crowd, interacting with the crowd is like one of my favorite things. Like seeing everyone like singing along and like being really present and like heckling us, but like good heckles. Do you know what I mean? Like where I'm like having a bit of a conversation with the crowd and like we're having a laugh together. Like I really, really love those like little moments. And then like for us on stage, like I don't know, we have all these like little in jokes between each other, and then we just like look at each other, or we'll say something that means nothing to anyone else. But like to us, it's like a hilarious thing. And then I'll like turn around and like AJ on the drums is like pissing herself laughing. And I'm just like, we need to carry on, we need to carry on, you know, like things like that. I love those like those tiny moments between people, whether that's like people in the crowd or any of us on stage. Like those are my favorite moments.
I've always thought there's like a quite a tongue-in-cheek cheekiness to the Menstrual Cramps. Like even
Yeah.
though the songs are like "Let's call the Tories," like there's a real humor to it, and I guess just talking about antagonistic, that like you are being the antagonists, the baddies, the
Yeah.
problem queer punks that are going to like ruin the establishment's day, but you're gonna do it with a sly nod and a funny little reference here and there. Is that a deliberate thing, or does it just come together because you four are, you're having a laugh together?
Yeah, I think it just sort of comes naturally to us. Like we're all really, really good friends, and like all of the band members over the years, like we've had different band members come and go, but you know, we've all been really good friends. And like I think also we all spend like so much time together outside of band stuff as well as band stuff. So we do have these kind of like constant jokes, constant laughs together. And also I think that's important when we're talking about such serious things and horrible things like going on in the world, or things that we've experienced. Like we have to have a bit of humor, otherwise like we wouldn't leave the house because it's so depressing. So it's like, you know, we have to,
and
I guess as well, some of it's a bit like,
right?
yeah,
That's what creates chemistry between people. You can see it on stage, you can hear it on the EP. It's like there's just something in the air that you've got to be able to, you're having a good time, you want to
yeah,
be there. And that, without that, yeah, you're right, it then suddenly isn't like, oh god, it's a bummer, isn't it? And we're just being
yeah,
reminded of how shit everything is. But it's not, it's galvanizing
yeah.
because you've got that element of like cheekiness and fun alongside the fury and like rage that goes along with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think it's important to show ourselves as like nuanced human beings. Like, yes, we're really angry, but we can also be really funny. And then we can also be really emotional and have a serious, deep conversation, but then also like flip it on the head and be really sexy or like overt or whatever it is, because we're not just one thing as a human being. And as musicians as well, we're not just like one thing. So like, I think it's important to like mesh all those things together and just be, you know, like our crude selves as humans, like saying whatever we say, doing whatever we do. Like, I never know what I'm going to say or do on stage. It just sort of happens. And, you know, I don't want to be like media trained or like have a manager that tells me what to do and things like that. Like, because I'm just like, that's not us and that's not like authentic. And I think that's what is important to us, the authenticity and like being all friends together and like best friends and hanging out and like having those authentic conversations on and off stage is like who we are. And, you know, like I said, Menstrual Cramps is an accidental band. So like really the least important thing in Menstrual Cramps is the music, really.
Yeah.
Like, even though obviously like I'm super glad I've got really talented musicians in my band and they are all incredible, but like really that's not what it's about. You know, we're not gigging being like, you know, we're amazing singers, we're amazing musicians, we're amazing songwriters, and you're going to sit and listen to us. It's like, no, we want you to like feel stuff and have a laugh and get involved and like know what's going on. And do you know what I mean? Have that experience.
Well, I just ask about the EP that's come out, collection of 4 new songs. I suppose the banger from it is Class War for me. And I was
Speaking of nuance, I mean, you know, what do you mean by this is class war exactly? Could you expand on that?
This is class war! Stand up, we're survivors. Stand up, support the strikers. Stand up, we're survivors. Stand up, support the strikers. Shout out Mick Lynch, RMT, ASLEF, Unison, Unite, Royal College of Nursing, I've got your back. TUC, CWU, UCU, Ustor, everyone go and join a union.
Yeah, see, I think our lyrics are I'm not very good at writing metaphors.
No.
You know, like some people write all these like amazing like lyrics, all these like metaphors, and everyone's trying to work out what they all mean and like if there's secret meaning. I'm like, no,
yeah, fuck that.
It's literally we do what we say on the tin. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not rocket science.
So the song is just this like list of trade unions that you show solidarity to, and it's just like everyone go and join a union. Was that just in the writing process of just going, it's that punk thing of like, just need to keep saying this?
Yeah, it was like, so that sort of like spoken bit that I do where I list all the unions and then I say that was just like an ad lib. So like we had the choruses and we had the verses, and then there was like this gap in the middle of the song. And like we were doing the demo, like sat at AJ's house flat, and we were like, and I don't know, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just list a bunch of unions and just say like, you know, UCU, CWU. And then there was like a joke in there, and then that was just like a filler until I was like, oh, and then I'll think of something else. But I can't think of anything else. And then it just sort of stuck like that. And I was like, well, now I've said it on the demo as a filler, I cannot possibly think of anything else that needs to be in that space. So then I just sort of like tweaked what I said in the demo just a little bit. And then that was literally it. I mean, I'm honestly, there's not much thought that goes into my lyrics, to be honest. It just sort of regurgitates out of me.
Yeah.
I can't help it.
Yeah, but that's it, isn't it? It's like, say how you feel and then, or what's on your mind, and then don't mess around with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a journal. A personal journal of mine is my lyrics.
They are therapeutic. They are like they are just like these phrases. I'm struggling to think of them now, but like just getting to the point about something and saying it over and over and over and over again does feel like a menstrual cramp.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other song that makes me think of, because I had a listen for this chat is I've had abortion, I've had 2. If you don't like it, then fuck you. Is that the right?
Yeah.
Had an abortion. Had an abortion, no, I've had 2. If you don't like it, then fuck you.
Yeah, and with that song, that was literally the lyrics I had for the song. I was like, this is my fact of my life. This is true. And I was really annoyed, like arguing with family members about having having 2 abortions. This was like during the Roe v. Wade stuff in America a few years ago. And then I basically posted a Facebook status telling everyone on Facebook that I'd had 2 abortions. And obviously I got a lot of backlash from family members and some friends. And I was angry about it. So then I just wrote that. And I was like, that's going to be a song. And then obviously, like, we ended up fleshing out some more like verses and stuff. But for ages, the song was literally like 2 minutes long of just me saying that over and over again.
Yeah.
I love that that you started off doing spoken word with just an acoustic guitar, really stripped down, and a lot of the songs like do have this real like rawness that it just comes back down to just saying the thing that needs to be said. I guess on that, things that need to be said, the next thing we wanted to talk to you about was the Bands Boycott Barclays, because we're living in an era where not only is it things need to be said, things need to be done and affecting change. So
for anyone who doesn't know about Bands Boycott Barclays, can you give us a bit of context about the campaign?
So basically we got booked to play the Great Escape Festival in Brighton. And then it was after the South by Southwest stuff had happened in America, the boycotts over there. So I was looking into like sponsors of festivals, and I realized that Barclays was a partner of the Great Escape Festival. So I spoke to my friend Liv Winter, who's previously been on your podcast.
Yes, thank you. Everyone can check out the live Manchester Punk Festival podcast. Liv Winter is a guest.
And
not sponsored by Barclays.
No. And so I was talking to them about festival sponsors and stuff, and like how like I could go about doing something about this. So then, like, first of all, obviously we spoke to our label and said we're not going to play unless they drop their partnership with Barclays. So can you get hold of them and just tell them to drop Barclays and write a statement to why? And then there was like a few back and forth emails, and our label had some phone calls and meetings and stuff with them. And then after maybe like 10 days, we realized like they're not going to do that, basically. So then we sort of went public. I wrote a statement as Menstrual Cramps with help from Liv. And then basically started like the small campaign, just a few of us, a few friends that we know, like activists and musicians. And we just basically started a campaign to ask the Great Escape to drop Barclays. And then we sort of realized there's other festivals that are also partnered with Barclays. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to start this campaign against all of them. And then we started Bands Boycott Barclays. And I think there's about maybe 8 or 9 of us in the core organizing group. And that's been like from 3 of us at the start, and now maybe 8 or 9 of us.
And it's been really, you've had some major success.
Yeah, massively. So, I mean, I think about 165 acts in the end pulled out of the Great Escape. They joined the boycott, along with like 2 venues, maybe 3 labels in the end, or 4 labels in the end.
Wow.
Showcases, and obviously separate artists, 165 of them. And then now, in the run-up, it was just before Download Festival, or I think it was the day that Download Festival started, actually, we got confirmation that all of Live Nation festivals in 2024 will no longer be partnered with Barclays.
Yeah. Power to amazing.
It was incredible.
That must tell us about that moment when you was that in one email that you got that news?
No, it was
like trickle through.
Yeah, and it was like we heard about it through the grapevine for like a few days, but then we were like, well, they've said this to us before, or like we've heard about this through someone before, and like nothing happened for the Great Escape. So like we're, until we see a statement, we don't believe it. And then we kept hearing from other people, and like yeah, and then we were kind of like, okay, like, well, do we push them? Like, do we say this to them? Like, do we try and get them to say something now? Like, we don't really know what's going on. And, you know, we kept putting stuff out there to keep the pressure on them, because we didn't want to just like hear this and then just stop before the statement was actually out there, or before any confirmation was out there. And, you know, people at Download were sending us photos of people like plastering over the Barclaycard logo and stuff. And we were like, okay, but we haven't got the confirmation yet. So we kept the pressure on social media, and we kept, you know, people signing the open letters and signing up to Bands Boycott Barclays, and people were still dropping out of Download and Isle of Wight and Latitude. And then, yeah, it was like we basically got the confirmation, and then we sent our press release, and then it was public knowledge. But yeah, it was when it was like the final, yeah, like we've pressed send on the press release, it's ready to go. I was like in my work office at the time, and I was like just like dropped my phone and stood up, and I just like started storming around my office, and I work only with like 4 people, and they were like, Emilia, are you okay? And I was like, no, oh my God, guys, I was like, I need to go for a cigarette now. And they were like, what's happened? And I was like, I think we've done it.
Oh, mate.
And then my phone was like popping off, and I was like, I still need to work for like 4 more hours. Like, get your head in the game.
I guess it's worth pointing out, if for listeners who don't know, Barclays invest billions in the arms industry, which is causing immeasurable harm to people across the world, but obviously, especially at the moment, the people of Palestine, and
Yeah.
and I believe also investment in fossil fuels. So there are a bunch of bad uns, basically.
Yes.
What really struck me as important about Great Escape to start with, but then obviously it spread to other festivals, is like, you don't have to be a shouty political punk band to like take a stance. And I've like gone through and listened to the playlists and some of the artists and discovered them, and it's like, yeah, like, even, you know, you just have to be human and care, and have, you can have agency of like what gigs you play and what events you do. I don't know if it
Exactly.
was your post on X or somebody's, but someone said like, we're not asking you to go and live in the woods and give up
Yeah.
like capitalism. This is a tactic. This is like
Yeah.
a picket line. I don't know if you can talk about like that response of convincing people of those conversations, and where there were surprises, but also like where it was really good that someone maybe you didn't expect went, yeah, cool, I'm up for pulling out or supporting.
Yeah, I think so. I think like we did like an FAQ quite early on in the campaigns. We had like an open meeting with all of the bands and artists who had signed the letter but not yet like joined the boycott of the Great Escape, but had signed the letter asking them to drop. So we invited everyone to sort of like an open video call meeting to basically discuss everyone's questions and try and have answers, because yeah, I think a lot of people were sort of like, well, if we boycott this festival, we have to boycott all of Live Nation. Oh, but then we have to boycott Ticketmaster, and then we have to boycott anything in the O2 or any of these venues. And then you're basically asking the music industry to collapse, and then we might as well live in the woods. And it was like, look, these are like strategic things. Like the boycott target is not Live Nation, you know, the boycott target is Barclays. Like Live Nation, you might not want to work with them as a musician for lots of other reasons. But that's not the ask of us, because the ask of us is specifically to do with what's happening in Palestine right now. And that's what we're fighting for, and that's what we're raising awareness for. So, you know, the BDS target isn't Live Nation, because Live Nation aren't the ones that are specifically funding the genocide that's happening in Palestine, whereas Barclays are, and you can see that, and there's research that has been done where you can see the money they're putting into it and all the different companies and all the money they're investing. So, you know, it was very strategic, and I think maybe I went into it quite naively because of being in the punk scene and being an activist for quite a long time, of just like, oh, this is an easy option for me because I already sort of like knew about it and understood. And do you know what I mean? But for other people, like, they didn't understand what a boycott was, or what that really meant about the strategy or the tactics, and what that meant for them as an artist, and maybe for their career, you know. And people were scared, musicians were scared, but you know, I think we did.
So there's a lot of unpacking that people need to do in times like this, and I always think you need to meet people where they're at and not appreciate that they've come on the same journey and are standing in the same shoes that yeah, as you say, everyone in the punk scene has already done that. And it is always worth having those conversations with someone and being like, okay, there's some education stuff to do and that might take some time, but like it's really amazing that that opportunity was given and through this campaign, and you were able to provide those like FAQs and to do all that work, and so it just gives people the opportunity to go on that journey.
Yeah. What I did find interesting was that some people who signed the open letter to the Great Escape, but then they didn't boycott in the end. But obviously, they read the FAQs and we would send them email updates about what was going on, sometimes video calls, and like messages back and forth. And obviously, when we had the Bands Boycott Barclays, when we started the Instagram account, we had the infographics and stuff. Then some of those bands were booked later on for Download or ROI or Latitude, and they pulled out of those ones.
So they've got
but didn't pull out of the Great Escape. Yeah, so and some people obviously just had to go away and do their own research and their own reading and their own education about it, and maybe also speak to other people who did pull out and realize, it hasn't flopped their career, like it's not the end of the world, or whatever they did. We're not going to turn around and ask people like, well, you didn't do it then, so why are you doing it now? But I think it's good, and it's showed progression, and also in such a short amount of time. Like we only like started the campaign in like maybe the end of March, maybe. I'm not even sure, the start of April. Like it was not that long ago, for like this to change and like have so much of an impact in such a short amount of time, like really, really, I think helped show these musicians, like you're saying, for across all genres, musicians who aren't maybe inherently political or like publicly political, or they haven't, like politics is not part of their sort of musician image or their brand or whatever on social media or at their gigs, for them to be a part of this and to show, like it just takes really a small amount of us in the grand scheme of things to do something like this in a small amount of time. Like think about the possibilities that could happen, for musicians as a whole, as a collective, if we did more stuff like this working together, rather than, people seeing each other as competition or not getting involved with each other because they're different genres. And that's been a lovely thing as well, to not just be surrounded by punk musicians talking about this stuff. Like we've made some good friends, and like what you're saying about the playlists and stuff that we made, like I listen to loads of those bands now that I never would have experienced or listened to or ever been around them in the punk
scene. Some of my
scene.
best friends play pop music.
Yeah, like, do you know what I mean? It's so lovely. Like it's really nice to like open my eyes to everyone else, expand everyone's horizons. Yeah, it was really, really lovely.